tune of $10 billion in the next few years. And this is an example of how AI intervention should be done. You choose very few use cases. You choose where technology is very mature. In this case, it's customer service. And you set up a team that's capable of executing. And with that, you're going to generate the results. And there's real ROI in terms of doing that. The latest thing I did is I bought the largest for-profit university in the UK, 48,000 students, pre-AI, thousands of recruiters, physical recruiters finding students, 4 to 6 weeks to get an application done, process, 4 weeks to get an interview, and then good education, and then you let people go into the job market. Fast forward with AI agent recruiting, less than a day to process all paperwork, an AI agent doing the interview in less than 5 minutes, personalized education, connected to the job market, you're graduating people. So the ROI to me, to finish, is in the established incumbents. If you just look at numbers, it is expected about $6 to $8 trillion of additional P&L impact. Multiply that as trading multiples of whatever, 8 times, 10 times. The value is going to sit on established incumbents that are going to have the ability to apply AI to their business, to increase sales, reduce cost, and build new business models. It is more than your traditional, applications.
Okay, let me push a little bit on that. What we see is people at the top of companies saying a lot of the things that you just said. I'm not saying it happens in the case of Shein or T-Mobile or whatever, but saying that, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And the fundamental issue is this is not about the technology, because the technology is improving at light speed. It's not about workflow management. That's one of the things that we focus on simplifying the workflow, which you have to do before you put the technology on top of it. It is about change management. And the ability of large, complex, bureaucratic companies to implement AI at scale is hindered unless there is that external pressure that I referred to. Yeah. I mean, take T-Mobile as an example. That's a very competitive landscape, and there is some pressure, competitive pressure from AT&T, Verizon, whatever, to get it done in the US market. But would you agree with that it's difficult to do it in complex bureaucratic companies or not?
It all starts with leadership. Everything starts with leadership. And it starts with having the right leader who had made the decision that's going to implement AI in their business. It's all about selecting few use cases that you can time directly to a P&L. What I like about my business, forget T-Mobile. T-Mobile, I'm the largest independent shareholder. It's a huge public company, the world's most valuable telecommunications company. I sit in the board. I'm an activist. I push them. But when I buy a company today, we like to do control buyouts. We like to own the company because you bring your own management to execute those transformations. What people sometimes say, it's hard to deploy this technology, and it is very hard. And whenever you do one of these interventions, you do a lot of different things. First is you need to have a great CEO or a great business expert that's going to believe in this. Secondly, you need to have a traditional CIO who's going to have the ability to make this company AI ready. You got to fix the digital foundation of a company. Third, you have the famous FDEs or forward deployed engineers who are the ones that are going to build the custom solutions.
But fourth, and more importantly, this is blocking and tackling. This is your transformation of it. This is going initiative by initiative. So anytime you're going to do a large scale or mid-scale AI implementation, it takes a lot of work. It takes leadership, it takes a playbook, and it takes a team that can execute.
Okay. Dina, you manage, what is it, 350 billion? Oh, I got that right?
357.
Okay, 357. And rising.
That's right.
Okay, so how do you measure ROI on a sector as sensitive, for example, as fixed income? Are you seeing more return from AI-driven alpha, better trades, or from invisible infrastructure that automates the back office? Where do you see it?
So at Guggenheim Investments, we're a fixed income and alternatives manager, and we approached AI very purposefully. And it was a very collaborative thought process that is generously supported by senior leadership, promoted, and we're actively involved. So I agree with my fellow panelists that it's change, transformation, and leadership sponsorship, and it's human capital, because without those two, it doesn't work. It also needs to be thought out very clearly before you start taking action. And we were very, I would say, careful about where we started and where we wanted to end, which we decided we would never end. It is going to constantly be an evolution because the markets that we are in are constantly changing. I am proud to say that with the support of my team and the resources that we brought on board and the preemptive thinking that we had, we've already started to see ROI at Guggenheim Investments with the AI that we have implemented. We were careful to upgrade our network. We were careful to create a data governance model for structured and unstructured data. We were careful to bring in new talent that will continue to maintain the data that we need in order for the outputs of the AI tools and use cases that we're already deploying to be useful and reliant. We've already embedded education, and we've already embedded all of that change management, because one of our most important assets are our people. And giving our people who, are part of our community at Guggenheim that power to amplify their skill sets and not replace them is the critical first step.
So just let me come back a bit. One thing that Marcelo mentioned, he mentioned the importance, for example, of the COI. I was sitting with somebody at one of the leading cloud, it was AWS actually, and we were talking about sending out surveys on getting clients to tell us what their create costs were in relation to their media costs. I mean, there's a general rule of thumb that create costs should not be more than 10%. We were discussing it. And then we discussed who should we send the survey to get most traction inside any company. Should we send it to the CMO? And we said no. Should we send it to the CIO? We said probably not. Should we send it to the CFO? And we said that's where we think we should send it. Do you agree with that?
I totally disagree with that.
Okay.
We're fortunate that our firm is not ginormous. We're 1,000 people on the Guggenheim investment side. We operate on a team-based approach. So the priorities of Guggenheim Investments, investment professionals, starting with the CIO, is critical, right? What is important to the investment process? Starting with the head of distribution, what is important to the wholesalers and those people who are out in the field raising assets? What are the things that they struggle with in order to meet their performance targets and drive success at Guggenheim? Listening to all of that feedback allowed the organization and the team to collectively decide that it was important for Guggenheim to not outsource our development of AI. We wanted to keep our secret sauce. We just wanted to build the tools that will allow us to amplify what we've been really good at for the last 25 years. And so we set our priorities, and once we set out our priorities and shared that with the head of distribution, the CIO, the CFO, the head of client services, the head of operations, me as president, it became abundantly clear that a lot of the use cases that we were very dead set on putting in place within 1 year had a tremendous amount of linkage and common denominator, and we found tremendous efficiencies, and that's why we have that ROI.
Okay. Now, last but not least, Jack, you're the frontier visionary, and you've argued that LLMs have hit a ceiling, and the real ROI is in large quantitative models, what you call LQMs. So AI for physics and chemistry, and if a company is only using AI for chatbots and emails, are they fundamentally missing the $1 trillion ROI found in materials science and drug discovery?
So Martin, let's start with AI failure. One of the largest banks in the world announced that they did 400 experiments with LLMs across the bank. 90% failed, only 10% succeeded. We see those numbers validated in the studies by McKinsey, Accenture, and many others. But we also hear of great success stories. Marcelo just mentioned a few. How do we reconcile the failure that we see systematically across the economy, but also some successes? And the answer is there's really two kinds of ROI we need to go for with AI. The first bucket of ROI is productivity, efficiency, the kind of things that were just discussed by my co-panelists. You did something in 6 weeks, now you take a day. You did something with 5 people, now you do it with 1 person. And that's where large language models, particularly when it comes to documents, images, those kinds of processes, they can shine. But a bank, it turns out, is mainly quantitative in nature, not verbal in nature. There's a lot of documents, and they did very well with there. That's the 10% success. But in the core risk management of the bank, the compliance people showed up and said, whoa, 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 whoa. You're telling me you have something called an LLM that you put the prompt, same words, same prompt, in twice. Once, then again, you get 2 different answers. No go. No go. We cannot have compliance on that kind of model. Instead of models that are trained on Reddit and Wikipedia and cat images, we need models trained on the real world. So the first bucket is efficiency, and we can definitely find great value in almost every sector of the economy with LLMs there. But when it comes to creating new product, when it comes to rolling out new innovation, that's where we need to go beyond the LLM. We need an AI that is trained on real-world data, not on stuff downloaded from the internet. And examples, you mentioned, of course, pharma and chemicals, materials, but it goes well beyond that. It goes to 85% of our GDP across the US, Canada, OECD, across the world, that is quantitative in nature, not semantic in nature. And yes, if you want to have a new medicine, do you think you want a chatbot to create the medicine for you? I'd rather not take that medicine. We do want an AI, though, that's trained on the output of thousands of experiments in the real world, trained on the equations of physics and chemistry. That is a large quantitative model, an LQM versus just an LLM. And here's my prediction, Sir Martin, for you this year. This year, 2026, we're going to see the alliance of LLMs to LQMs. Why? Because LLMs are great for human interface. We speak naturally to LLMs. That's one of the reasons why they're so viral. It's very natural for us to interact with the LLM. But when we ask the LLM a quantitative question, help me with this risk management issue in a financial services company, the LLM can now, starting this year, reach out to an LQM on the back end, get the answer, and then serve it up via the LLM to the user. This integration of LLM LQM is what's going to happen this year, and I think it will change the face of ROI, because now instead of just the 10% of productivity, and you get wonderful productivity in code generation, in tasks and things like that, we're going to also attack the 85, 90% of product creation and innovation.
So just taking that, expanding on that for a second, where are we seeing the best development of LQMs? And we have 2 different systems, well, we have 3 systems. We have a US system, tends to be closed and more expensive. We have a Chinese system, which tends to be open and less expensive. And I guess we have a Middle Eastern, Saudi-driven alternative based on the energy supplies that we have in the Middle East. Who's going to develop the LQMs fastest?
Let me start with the GCC, because the GCC happens to be a set of economies that are very resource intense. They're physical AI based. The GCC is focused on energy, on resources, on building, on all kinds of materials, chemicals. If you look at not only Aramco, but also SABIC, which is the subsidiary of Aramco that turns the petroleum supply chain into useful products in the world. The products that 85% of everything that we have in this room, this rug, so on and so forth, has its origin in that supply chain. And so the GCC is particularly focused now on this integration of not only the LLMs, but also quantitative models that help it make better catalysts for crude oil, help it make better catalysts for the products that we all need. Pharmaceuticals. Bahrain recently announced that they're using software, LQMs, to make a new drug. How is a sovereign state now in the business of making new medicine? That is the power of where AI is going. We're taking it away from just traditional, say, drug makers and democratizing it to nation states now who want to be in that game of delivering medicine to their own people.
Tony,
so I think the GCC is an example.
Okay. So, Tony, based on your experience in the kingdom, what's your response to Jack on
Yeah,
that?
I agree with Jack. I mean, obviously, the Middle East has a lot of energy, and they are determined to invest in the future. Okay, this is why FII exists. So I agree with Jack. I want to comment on this open source thing.
Yeah.
Because as I show you in the room, I have DeepSeek on my phone. I have Gemini and I have ChatGPT.
Right.
And I depend on what question I ask.
Which is best?
Well, they are all similar. But what I use them for is depend on the type of question. I ask one I trust, because you cannot trust any one of them. I think sometimes you get a lot of hallucination. I have personal experience with that. But I want to comment on open source, because open source could have an impact on ROI. You know, OpenAI is not open. Okay, maybe this will change the name. DeepSeek is open. Now, you know, Google search, when I use it, it's not open source, but it's free. So that affects the user experience. I think, in a way, if there's an alternative, unless you sell ads, which is what they do, that will have an impact on the financial return on investment, I would think.
Okay.
All right, can I just jump on that one thing?
Yeah, I've got one final question,
Good.
which for each of you to, we'll start with you, Jack. So in one sentence, you're only allowed one sentence. You can't make
That could be tough.
multiple sentences into one sentence. What is the single metric that will define AI success this year? That's in the 2077 calendar year. Is it margin expansion, for example? Or is it time to market? Or is it employee retention? What do you think, Jack?
I would say that the single defining ROI statistic is going to be the division of resources input to output. It's going to be almost like what a Sharpe ratio is. If you think about Sharpe ratio, it's going to be the Sharpe ratio of AI.
Okay, 3 sentences then. Dina.
I think it's all three, depending on who you ask, right? I mean, if you're asking a CEO, he's going to say margin expansion. If you're talking to, someone who's, in charge of the cultural aspect of the organization, they're going to say retention, right?
CEO.
Yeah.
As CEO, what's
As CEO, for me, it's all three. I mean, I care about the client experience, and I care about making money for the firm, and I care about my people being happy.
Okay.
And I've achieved all three with what we've done in AI, just so you know.
All right, Marcelo?
So I'll take a little longer just to give a little preamble. The last 2 years, the world has invested hundreds of billions of dollars in building AI, right? We invested in power, in data centers, we have invested in semiconductors, and we have invested in LLMs or applications.
$660 billion by the hyperscalers.
One of the biggest investments in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
2026 will be defined by the application of AI to the enterprise. It is time to grab this incredible technology and actually put it to work to generate real benefits to mankind. Whether it's ROI, whether it's better healthcare, whether it's better education, I think 2026 and 2027 will be the years that mark where this technology comes to life and it actually creates effect on business and people.
Okay. Last word from...
I hope in the next year or two, there will be some conceptual breakthrough to how we approach intelligence. I think we should have a higher standard for the word intelligence beyond productivity and efficiency, which is very useful. So don't get me wrong. So I think the future is great. We should focus on the future. This is not the end of the story. That's my point.
No, I'm going to take moderator's view. So I just want to mention one thing at risk of 8 seconds to go. There was a guy called Hubert Joly who became CEO of Best Buy in Minneapolis, ex-McKinsey. And he walks into Best Buy, and it's to turn them from a bricks and mortar retailer to a digital retailer. So slightly different, but same thing. I'm getting time in here. And comes in, and they keep on telling him when he gets into Minneapolis, it's about change management. And after 6 months, he realizes it is about change management, and he changes the management. I leave you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir Martin, thank you very much, and thanks to your panel as well. That's okay. In just a moment, we are going to welcome to this stage His Excellency Julius Maada Bio. He is the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, and he will be delivering a keynote on Africa's demographic momentum and the policies and investments that could turn that nation into a long-term economic engine. His Excellency has served as the President of Sierra Leone since April of 2018. Sierra Leone has had a history of political upheaval and challenges in economic recovery, as many of you well know. President Bio has been focused consistently on education with free primary and secondary school education in his nation. Now, after his remarks, Richard will come back to do an interview with His Excellency to get a better understanding of the investment opportunities in Africa and to examine if Africa could be a good partner for the United States and Latin America. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Julius Maada Bio.
Thank you. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you very warm greetings from the great people of Sierra Leone and West Africa as a whole. It is a great honor for me to be here today as the keynote speaker and distinguished guest of honor at this 4th edition of the FII Summit here in Miami. Allow me first to express my sincere appreciation to FII Institute, His Excellency Yasir Al-Ramayan, Richard Atias, and distinguished leaders supporting this great and important global forum. Through this initiative, ladies and gentlemen, you've created a space where investors, innovators, and policymakers come together, not only to discuss the future of the global economy, but also help to shape it. This is precisely what this summit represents. FII gatherings are not simply forums of conversation, normally called talk shops. They are actually places where partnerships are formed, where strategies are refined, and where capital begins to move towards opportunities of tomorrow. And today, that moment is accelerating. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet at a moment when the global economy is navigating an increasingly complex and shifting landscape. Conflicts in parts of the Middle East, ongoing war in Ukraine, instability in some parts of Africa, and all of this remind us that geopolitics continues to shape economic realities in a profound way. These developments are influencing how nations think about energy security, food systems, technology, supply chains, and long-term economic resilience. For decades, as we know, globalization was driven primarily by efficiency. The search for lower cost and fast production networks. Today, that calculus is changing. Resilience matters. Diversification matters. Strategic alignment matters. Across global markets, capital is being repositioned to respond to these shifts, which is why the theme for this summit, Capital in Motion, captures this so well. Capital today is moving across borders, across sectors, across technologies in search of stability, innovation, and long-term growth. And so, the central question before investors and policymakers today is simple. Where will capital move next? Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most powerful forces shaping this answer is the demographic change. Many parts of the world are experiencing aging populations and shrinking workforces. Africa presents a very different reality. By the middle of this century, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be an African. This demographic transition, when matched with the right investment, skills development, and economic policies, represents one of the most significant growth opportunities of the 21st century. But demographics alone do not determine destiny. Investment does. Today, Africa sits at the intersection of several structural transitions shaping the global economy. And one of the most important lies at the convergence of artificial intelligence, the global energy transition, and advanced technologies that will power the next generation of economic growth. These systems require vast digital infrastructure, reliable clean energy, and secure supplies of critical minerals such as lithium, cobalt, bauxite, and rare earth elements. Many of these are found in Africa. At the same time, the development and deployment of these technologies will depend on the dynamics and adaptable workforce. Africa's young and increasingly digitally connected population, therefore, presents not only a demographic shift, but a strategic advantage. A strategic advantage in a world where innovation, energy systems, and human capital are becoming deeply interconnected. For global investors, this convergence places Africa at the center of the most important economic transformations of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, for investors seeking where capital can deploy at scale, several opportunities are becoming increasingly clear. First, energy infrastructure that supports both industrial growth and global clean energy transition. Second is the digital connectivity and data infrastructure that power emerging technology ecosystems. Third, modern agriculture and food systems that are capable of feeding growing populations. Fourth, logistics and transport networks that connect regional markets and enable trade. And finally, the responsible development of critical minerals essential to global manufacturing and energy technologies. These are not theoretical opportunities. They are real investments that aim at long-term capital, technology, and partnerships that can unlock significant economic value. Increasingly, these platforms are being structured through partnerships that combine sovereign participation, development finance institutions, and private capital. When public policy, catalytic capital, and private investment work together, the result is scalable opportunities capable of attracting long-term institutional investors. Within West Africa, let me say, West Africa is emerging as one of the most strategic economic regions of the coming decades. Our region sits along major Atlantic maritime trade routes connecting the Americas, Europe, and also Africa. It possesses significant agricultural potential, growing urban markets, and important mineral resources. At the same time, regional integration through ECOWAS and the African Continental Free Trade Area is helping create larger and more connected markets where business and investors can operate at scale. For investors seeking diversification and long-term growth, West Africa is increasingly becoming a region of strategic importance. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to illustrate this opportunity through the experience of Sierra Leone, where I lead. When my administration took office, we placed human capital development at the center of our national development strategy. The truth is, sustainable economic progress always begins with people. We have therefore prioritized education, healthcare, skills development, and expanded opportunity for our young people. At the same time, we are expanding employment pathways through our youth employment scheme, one of Sierra Leone's big 5 game changers. Working with the private sector, we are creating opportunities for young people across agriculture, infrastructure, entrepreneurship, and skills-based industries. We are also investing in digital transformation, expanding broadband connectivity, and strengthening digital public services so that the young Sierra Leoneans can participate fully in the global digital economy. Another pillar of development agenda is the empowerment of women. Through the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act of 2022, Sierra Leone strengthened legal frameworks to increase the participation of women in leadership, employment, and also access to finance. Agriculture also remains central to our economic transformation. Through our Feed Salon initiative, we are modernizing agriculture through technology, mechanization, and stronger value chains, strengthening food security while opening new opportunities for investment across the agricultural economy. At the same time, Sierra Leone is responsibly developing its mineral resources, strengthening infrastructure, expanding value addition in sectors such as bauxite, iron ore, rutile, and critical minerals. We are also strengthening our energy sector to support long-term economic growth. Our offshore basin remains one of the most promising underexplored petroleum frontiers along the West Africa Transform margin. As global demand for secure and diversified energy supplies evolve, Sierra Leone is working responsibly to develop its oil and gas potential in ways that support domestic power generation, industrial development, and regional energy security. For long-term investors,
policy certainty matters as much as the opportunity. Sierra Leone is therefore strengthening the regulatory framework, improving the ease of doing business, and working closely with development finance institutions to ensure that investment platforms are transparent, predictable, and also globally competitive. Our objective is simple here: to create an enabling environment where responsible capital can deploy with confidence and grow in our economy.
Because capital ultimately moves where institutions are strengthening, where policies are predictable, and where governments are committed to long-term transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, periods of global change are often create the most significant investment opportunities. As capital reallocates in response to geopolitical shifts, technological disruptions, and demographic transformation, new economic frontiers inevitably emerge. And Africa falls in that category. But I was not happy this morning when there was so much discussion about global economy and there was not even a mistake of mentioning Africa. Africa is increasingly one of those frontiers. For long-term institutional investors, the most attractive markets are those where structural growth, natural resources, and human capital converge. Africa represents one of the few regions in the world where all the three are aligned simultaneously. As global capital searches for stable, long-term duration opportunities in energy, infrastructure, food systems, and digital connectivity, Africa is emerging not simply as a frontier market, but as a strategic investment destination. The institutions and investors who partner with Africa today will help shape industries, supply chains, and growth platforms that define the global economy of tomorrow. Markets are rarely built by observers. So let's not be observers. They are actually built by early partners who recognize structural opportunity and help shape it. Across West Africa and Sierra Leone, the foundation for the next phase of growth are already being laid. Those who engage early will not only participate in that growth, they will help define it. As I close, Africa is seeking capital that is not seeking capital that simply moves through our economies. We are seeking partners who build with us industries, infrastructure, opportunity, and create lasting prosperity. The opportunities are rare. The potential is enormous. And the moment, ladies and gentlemen, is now. So my message to global investors gathered here today is simple. Look at Africa with a new lens. If not, with a pair of fresh eyes. See it not as a collection of risk, but as a continent of opportunity. Let's build it together. Partnership we endure. Because when capital moves with societies rather than simply through them, it creates lasting value for investors, for communities, and the global economy. And as capital continues to move across the world in search of future, let me leave you with this thought. Africa is not waiting for the future. Africa is actually building that future. And therefore, we invite you to be part of this construction. Thank you. Thank you. On the other side.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this inspiring speech, and thank you for taking the time to accept few questions. We'll do a very short exercise.
Thank you.
I know, as a former general, that you go straight to the point. So thank you for accepting these questions. Africa population boom, opportunity or taking risk?
It's both, but more of an opportunity. Risk if we do not invest in that population, and great opportunity for the world and Africa if we invest in skills development and make sure that they can help the global community, as most of the West is experiencing aging population. So Africa, being a young and fast-growing population, provides the greatest opportunity of our time, especially when most of the West and many other parts of the world are aging.
What will turn Africa's demographics into real economic power, in your opinion, Mr. President?
I've touched on that already. It's investment. We have to make sure that these young people are empowered with the knowledge of today. Fit for purpose education that we align with what we need today. AI, technology, entrepreneurship. These are the things that we need to be able to move to the next. And so for me, the most important investment in these people should be education, making sure that what I have called human capital development is a combination of education, which feeds the brain, but also health that takes care of the structure, but also the what we call food security, which is to make sure that we are properly fit for purpose for everything that the world throws at us. The world is navigating a very difficult moment, and for me, education is the compass, the navigational skills, so that we can successfully get to our destination.
You just mentioned that in your conclusion, but why Africa's moment is finally here and is not just a promise?
Well, when you combine the sheer amount of critical minerals that we have, which is needed, and you combine the demographic momentum, and also the other opportunities in terms of infrastructure, entrepreneurship, the creativity of these young people, but also entrepreneurship, you will realize that it is a unique, that convergence of opportunities is good for growth right across the continent, but also in the world.
In your opinion, Mr. President, what is the missing link between population growth and real prosperity?
Investment. Real population growth means nothing. Demographics does not mean anything. It means that we have to make them fit for purpose for the world in which we live. We have to equip them with, again, I use this word, the navigational tools to be able to navigate an extremely complex and evolving world in which we live today. Without that, they are going to be lost, and they are going to be part of the liability of society. And today, we have boundaries. We can attempt to move people. But again, like capital, people move towards opportunities, an environment that is great. So we can attempt to shift them, but they will always come back. So let's educate them where they are, give them the tools to contribute to national development, but also to global economy, and that will make them meaningful citizens of the world. They have to be global nomads, people who roam the world with ideas skills and the energy, the creativity, but also the technical skills to contribute wherever they find themselves.
Like you this morning, and as someone who was born in Africa, I was disappointed to not hear Africa being mentioned. So what does the world still misunderstand about Africa?
I think we have to speak up, Africa. You have to give credit platforms like this for us to come and tell the world that there is a place called Africa, and it is the source of most of the critical minerals. It still holds the great potential to feed the world, and that we have great people there who only need to be invested in.
Can you attract investment without strong institutions, Mr. President?
We are building those institutions. We know that capital is shy of a lot of things: instability, lack of predictability, policy uncertainty, the many hurdles and over-regulation of the economy, too much taxes, especially corporate tax. So these are all things that we are working on. And in Sierra Leone in particular, we have done quite a bit on that one. You can register a company in 24 hours. We have one of the lowest corporate taxes in West Africa. We are the second most peaceful country in West Africa and fifth most peaceful country in the whole of Africa. So the conditions exist to invite you, but it's beckoning, but we need to maybe amplify that beckoning so that all the world can see and come and be part of us to build. We don't just want to be a source of raw materials. That is what is happening. And we talk about the global economy. We want to fuel it with African resources, but we are not talking about Africa as a place where value addition can take place and also support the world.
What could happen, Mr. President, if global capital doesn't show up in Africa very fast?
We are going to continue to, like I told you, we are going to continue to build the future for ourselves. It may be slow, but I know that capital will always go where the conditions exist for profit, and we are going to create that environment so that it becomes so inviting that the world will have to turn up in Africa.
Is, in your opinion, the world offering Africa's partnership or just conditions, aids?
Lately, they are offering partnerships. We have in Sierra Leone in particular, especially with the United States, we have had a lot of approaches and we are working on those partnerships, public-private partnerships that will transform the economy. So the days of conditions are not much. I think we can dialogue. This is a great platform for dialogue, like we said today. Dialogue is the beginning. We humanize. You put your case, I put my case. We can only talk about a deal when it's comfortable. So we also have to present our case in a more rational way and ones that make it possible for investors to view it as a place.
And if Africa leverages its demographics, how powerful can it become?
I mean, 1 in 4 people is going to be African. That is no mean feat. I believe that we have the power to not only develop Africa, but also to share that creativity, especially of the young people, with the world. Before we have done it, and we can do it in a more creative and mutually beneficial way today, where Africa gets to benefit, the world gets to benefit, and we all make progress together. We cannot afford to work in silos and think that it's going to work. Development prosperity must be shared so that the world will be at peace.
If we look at the world map, your country, Sierra Leone, is probably one of the closest country to the American continent. If we look, it's almost straight. So what do you have to say to the potential American and Latin America investors?
Well, we are sitting right across the Atlantic, and we have a lot to share in common, and we are calling on the potential partners in the United States and especially across Latin America that we can work together. And at scale, we are also involved in governance at scale in such a way that we are creating the conditions necessary for them to come. And I can assure anybody that goes into Sierra Leone that I will not only help you to get registered, but we will accompany you through the many processes so that you become a registered business, but also have returns on your investment and to be able to repatriate it. We are doing that for a few companies that are there, and we want to invite the world to come there. We are prepared. Sierra Leone is open for partnership, and that is all we have to say to them.
Mr. President, you are not just the President of Sierra Leone, you are not just an African leader. Your country had a seat for almost 3 years at the UN Security Council. What did you learn from that experience?
The world is complex. There's much that goes on that we, the ordinary people, when we are out of that chamber, don't see. But that is for us to discuss. It's quite an enormous task. And navigating these complexities is what we have to master in order for us to have a world that is equitable, that we share. There's so much wealth, but it is limited to a few countries. And the world is not going to be at peace if we do not share, because boundaries should not be separation walls. They are actually lines of cooperation. That is what they should serve. We should share in this, the creativity that other countries have had the opportunity of taking to higher levels. So Africa is the place, I think, for investors with a vision. I will invite you to be ahead of the curve, to pre-position yourself there, so that by the time the world realizes, you would have been far gone. We are going to make sure that Africa moves.
And ladies and gentlemen, if I have just a little advice to give you, just visit Sierra Leone because the capital has a fantastic name, Freetown. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. An excellent discussion. Thanks. Our final session today takes a look even further ahead into a frontier where AI and synthetic biology are beginning to converge in ways that could reshape medicine and industry, and in fact, maybe even the very building blocks of life. You all know Colossal from its pioneering genetic engineering work and the company's work on de-extinction with an aim to revive species. Some have even said resurrect species like the woolly mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, the dodo bird. So please watch this video, which comes to us courtesy of Colossal. And then right after that video, we're going to welcome to the stage Peter Diamandis and Ben Lamb, who is the CEO of Colossal.
We have this field called de-extinction.
We are correcting our intervention in nature.
Absolutely mission critical.